Particle Beam Nachos, written by Laughing Target. Chief Engineer Oleg stared at the small object embedded in the side of Trade Station 7-B. The object was a flat disk measuring approximately 30 centimeters in diameter. It was made of a black material, and its surface was covered in a rubbery orange substance. Within the orange substance were a number of white, brittle triangular objects. The orange substance had adhered the brittle triangles to the black disk. Engineer Assistant Foodie positioned her magnetic boots to crouch down and get a better look at the object. "What do you think it is?"
Oleg shrugged. "Oh, your guess is as good as mine."
"You think it's an attack?"
Oleg snorted over his sitcoms. "Doubtful. It's too small. I didn't do anything more than surface damage."
The speculation didn't help Oleg come to any meaningful conclusion to the object's origins. Space Traffic Control picked up an unusual warp signal an hour ago from a well beyond the normal exit point for visiting ships. They initially thought that it was an emergency, yet sensors didn't pick up the signal after the warp signature faded. An hour later, they knew why. The station's defensive systems registered an attack after something unknown impacted the hull. After another hour of confusion, station security was able to identify that no ships in the vicinity had their weapon systems powered, let alone fired the shot. That was when Oleg and Foodie were dispatched on their spacewalk to investigate the impact site. As Oleg studied the impact point, he realized that they were lucky. The reason the object wasn't identified by station sensors was that it was too small and moving too fast to register. Eyeballing the object's estimated mass and impact depth, he calculated the thing must be moving at high relativistic speeds before being arrested by the station's kinetic shielding. Without a shielding, the station would have been obliterated from the pure kinetic energy transfer. He decided to keep that revelation to himself. It wouldn't do any good to worry management that they were a maintenance test away from disaster. Speaking into the comms, Oleg reported back to the station control.
"Found the impact site. It's a thin black disk covered in an orange substance that is embedded into the hull. The disk is clearly manufactured by an intelligent species. Materials are currently unknown. Damage is cosmetic and can be patched in under an hour."
"Copy. Identify potential hazards and remove if deemed safe," a voice returned over the comms. Foodie, who was part of the comm channel, had already pulled out a sensor pad and was scanning the object. After a few minutes of passing through different test protocols, she reported her findings. "The object appears to be safe. There aren't any major hazards. The black disk is showing minor radiation buildup consistent with exiting warp. The orange substance is organic and mildly carcinogenic, which is likely the result of an extreme heat applied to it."
Oleg grunted. "Sounds good. Let's extract it and fix this hole."
Foodie pulled out another device and waved it over the object. "I also don't see any easy points to fix the suction tube. How will you get this out, sir?" Oleg rolled his eyes. Kids these days were overly reliant on fancy technological gear to get the job done. Shooing her aside, Oleg extracted a metal pry bar from his tool belt and shoved a thin tip into the crack between the object and the disk. Even though his species had been spacefaring for close to a millennia, many problems were still solved with good old-fashioned primitive methods. Hit it with a stick, poke it with a stick, hold it up with a stick. This time, he pulled it with a stick. With a grunt, he levered a corner out of the impact site and pried open a gap to allow grasping appendages access. Now open, Oleg gestured to Foodie, sticking out her forked tongue in jest. She pulled the disk out from the opening. She turned it over and looked at the bottom. "Sir, there appears to be words here. It's in a text I don't recognize."
"Check it out, then," Oleg said, annoyed that he had to state the obvious.
Pulling out a pad again, Foodie scanned the text on the bottom. After this, her eyes went wide as she put the object back into its hole.
"Assistant Foodie, why did you put that object back into the impact site?"
Oleg said, perplexed at the sudden behavior. In response, Foodie quietly tilted the pad screen before saying, "I think we should leave it alone for now." On the screen, Oleg read the text. Language, English, origin, human, translation, microwave and dishware safe.
"So, what does this explain?"
Oleg asked. "Pardon the phrasing, but have you been living in an asteroid?" Foodie asked. Oleg was annoyed and didn't want to pardon the phrasing.
"Explain yourself."
"You really don't know about the humans. They're the ones that invented the celestial elastic," Foodie replied. Oleg had to admit the new elastic was a boon to his job and made keeping the station together far easier, particularly when using a material's incredible strength to patch together parts while waiting for replacements. His single 10-centimeter length of material was so stretchy that he could hold together a 5-centimeter wide object just as easy as he could wrap the entire station with it.
I don't see your point, Erlich stated,
still wondering why Footy was suddenly afraid of the object. Wordlessly, she pulled up something on her pad before handing it to Erlich. It was a Galactic Council Patent Office report. After reading the GCPO, Erlich still didn't quite comprehend what Footy was trying to communicate. Sure, these humans were incredible to have invented the celestial elastic, just to use a pair of moons and a planet to make a slingshot. Sure, they were a Deathworld species, a Category 10 at that. That didn't explain Footy's hesitation. After indicating as such, Footy pulled up a video on her pad. It was a moon deorbiting over the dead world before impacting, splitting two bodies apart. A second moon orbiting in background in an elliptical pattern indicating that it was a captured body. Footy pointed to the name on the planet. It matched the one humans tested for their elastic on. Erlich's brow raised. How did this happen? Turns out, Footy said, the little test the humans did had some big problems. Sure, the engineering was incredible. Not only did the elastic absorb the energy of the orbiting moon, they also managed to anchor the elastic into the cores along with the catch mechanism on the central moon. The problem was that this was when the middle moon pulled the elastic and gave some of the energy to the outer moon. This destabilized the two orbits. The inner moon ended up deorbiting into the planet and cracking it apart, while the outer moon was slightly sped up. Erlich blinked. Before he could reply, Footy kept talking. The inner moon was mostly made up of iron, based on the simulations. When that planet reforms in a century, it'll now have a working magnetosphere. Even more interesting, the interaction and heat from the impact will form a new atmosphere. Based on the simulations, it should be able to support life in a million years or so. Erlich couldn't believe what he heard. An inebriated wager not only led to the development of an amazing material, it also accidentally led to the potential formation of a new life-bearing world.
Assistant Footy, it is my opinion that we should leave this object in place until we can contact the human government,
Erlich announced. Good idea, sir. I wish I would have thought of that, Footy snarked in response. 2 months passed while the object remained embedded in the hull. Erlich was on the verge of forgetting it existed when he was called to the executive conference room. In it, he saw a pair of humans along with the station manager.
Now that we're all here, the manager started, we can begin. I understand from these reports that you're engineers, correct?
One of the humans nodded. He said, Yes, sir, we are.
Any relation to these Florida men? The manager said with worry in his voice.
No, sir, we're from Alabama, the other human said. Erlich felt relief. He didn't want to meet these Florida men, nor any of the other groups mentioned in the report. The region called Alabama wasn't mentioned, so these two humans must be relatively safe. Or for Deathworlders, at least. They were polite enough.
I'll let my chief engineer speak for us, then. He's more knowledgeable in these matters, the manager said, doing what the managers do and shuffled off the work to others.
Erlich sighed as he regarded the Deathworlders. Even though they looked affable and friendly, he didn't want to offend them.
To keep it simple, we found a black disc with an orange adhesive on the surface. Is it safe to handle?
One of the humans chuckled. Of course, it's harmless.
Then how did it end up embedded in our owl?
The human coughed. That's a bit of a story. You see, we're engineers running a particle beam facility. It's used to synthesize exotic materials. We use it for FTL, gravity manipulation, manufacturing insulators, and the like. So far, this made sense. Particle energy did form the basis of exotic element creation.
This material was a result of your experiments, then?
Erlich asked. The humans shifted in their seats, looking uncomfortable. Well, not exactly. It's a plate of nachos. Erlich didn't understand the word and repeated it slowly.
Nachos?
The second human smirked. No, it's ours. Nachos. The first human laughed and put up his appendage and then said, Ha! Good one. The second human hit the first human's appendage with his hand. Erlich didn't understand the joke. Anyway, the first human continued, nachos is a food. The orange substance is cheese, and it is in a semi-solid state when warm and congeals when cooled. It must be hard as a rock in the vacuum of space right now. Once it loses its moisture, it becomes a bear to get off. The human tapped his manipulator appendages on the table. As for the plate it's on, well, that's an experimental insulator. We figured it made for a good nacho plate because it would get warm when it heated up with nachos.
That still doesn't explain how it ended up in our hull,
Erlich replied, getting annoyed by the roundabout explanation. I'm getting to that, the human replied. One of our engineers, Dan, didn't like how long it took to get the nachos cooked. It was a minute and 15 seconds in a 1,000-watt microwave. So he had a great idea. We have this nice particle beam emitter right there, and a material that was perfect insulator. After some calculations, he figured all we had to do was hit the plate with a microsecond of energy, and we'd have perfectly cooked nachos. It got real popular because the microwave had a bad habit of cooking unevenly and drying out parts of the cheese. Oleg's jaw dropped. These humans were using a particle beam emitter to cook snacks. Turns out, the human continued, the material isn't an insulator at all. It was absorbing all that energy. The physics boys are still trying to figure out the mechanism, but they think it has something to do with atomic structure. They say that it's rigid until it hits some breaking point, then it inverts and releases all the stored energy in an instant. After using the plate for a few months, we hit that breaking point. The energy released was so intense that it sent the plate into warp and didn't fully dissipate the momentum until it came out of warp here. Ulik finally understood Footy's fear. If the humans could accidentally crash a moon into a planet, accidentally sending a snack food into warp because they wanted to cook it faster, made perfect sense. "Are you sure you're not related to the Florida men?" Ulik asked again. The human turned his head to the side. "No, sir. We're nothing alike. We do share a border, though." End of story. I'd greatly like to thank our Tier 5 channel members, Caspar Arnholt, John Creighton, Manatharia, 050, Dragzoon WRE, and Elijah Silvercross. Thank you very much.